Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm JJ Flizanes, your empowerment strategist, producer, and winemaker. Thank you for downloading today's episode. Today, we're going to talk about finding emotional freedom. And this episode is actually an interview of me on my client and friend Vesta Hurlbutt's podcast called Open Heart Healing. You've heard from her before. She's in the mastermind this year. She was in the mastermind last year. She was in the Empowerment Strategist, the second group. So she's been on the podcast many times, but I wanted you to hear her podcast. And I wanted to invite you to go listen to her podcast and subscribe to it as well, because she represents someone who's been where you are, who heard a call, felt a call, took some action, and has started the work and has now put herself out there, created her own summit called The Power of Choosing You. She did it last year and she's doing it again this year. You'll hear more about that later. And of course, she launched her own podcast and she's killing it. So I hope you'll check it out after listening to today's episode. I just want to remind you we're getting closer to the Embodied Healing Intensive. So if you need a payment plan, you got about 3 months left to get that underway. Go to jjflizanes.com/EHI, Embodied Healing Intensive. And we still have applications open for the Date Your Body beta that is starting next month in August. It's a 2-month program, and I've got applications on the desk right now. So I'm sure there's at least a couple of spots still open if you're interested in being a part of the Date Your Body beta. Go to jjflizanes.com/Date Your Body to apply. There is no cost to apply. We jump on a quick call and there's no obligation. We just see if it's a fit and if there's room for you to join us in this healing body shame, loving yourself at a new level while incorporating all of the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual things physically to you and your body. I can't wait to get started. I'm going to be doing it right along with you. So if you're interested, please don't hesitate, because of course, as you probably already know with betas, it just means that you're going to get it at a little bit less because we're figuring it out together. There are lots of wonderful tools already included, but I'd like to explore and take this program a little bit deeper and revisit some of the things I've done in the past and marry them with the things I'm doing now. So again, jjflizanes.com/Date Your Body. And again, don't forget to go sign up for Vesta's Summit, powerofchoosingyou.com or powerofchoosingyousummit.com, and listen to her show, Open Heart Healing. Enjoy today's conversation.
Hi, welcome to the Open Heart Healing Podcast. Today is a very, very special day for me. I am having JJ Flizanes on here. She is so many things. I am just going to say a couple. I'm going to let her say most of it, but she is the host of Spirit Purpose Energy podcast, which is the one I listen to out of all of her podcasts. It's the one I listen to the most. She's a winemaker, which is extremely special because I got to watch that journey. She is my coach. She is my mentor. I am extremely nervous about this podcast because it's like the coach being interviewed by me. So it's very, very special. She has showed me and taught me my worst and my best, and she sees a lot of both of those from me too. Sometimes, unfortunately, you are short, and the people who are teaching you and loving you and being who they are for you that you need, you don't always treat them kindly. And sometimes JJ gets that side of me, unfortunately, but she is still here. She is still my teacher. And she's also, more importantly, my friend. Hi, JJ. Welcome.
Hi, Vesta. I honor, I allow, I accept, I celebrate whatever you're feeling right now. Although I will wish that you would not be nervous that it's me out of everyone, because as you said, I see you, I know you, I see your greatness, I see all the parts of you. So there's really nothing, we're going to uncover today that's new because it's not a coaching session. So it's us just talking about whatever you want to talk about.
I know but it's like, you're seeing me do something you're already very proficient at. So that's where the nervousness, I'm always a little bit nervous at the beginning. It's just something about that triggers me a little, probably part of the core wounds, which is something I definitely want to talk about today, because JJ, like I said, she's my coach. And a couple years ago, I took a course with her. And the very beginning of that course, the first thing, one of the first things, it's not the first thing that you go over and you learn is your core wounds. And we all know we have them. We don't all know what they are. We can maybe assume what they are. I feel like most people like the feeling of not being enough a lot of times is a core wound, and people will definitely relate to that. But JJ doesn't just teach you what they are, she teaches you how to go one step beyond and how to get past. You'll never get over your core wounds, but she teaches you how to cope and be better than your core wounds. Do you want to touch something on that?
Let's just use the word rewire.
Oh yeah, rewire. That's one of her courses now. Rewire your core wounds. Is that what it's called? Rewire.
Rewiring your core wound patterns.
Yes. Can you give us a little bit of what you do, how you do that?
First, because I was responding to your opening words, I want to acknowledge you for an excellent job of this podcast. You are great at it. Your solo shows kick butt, and I love them. And our community who comes from my show to your show loves them. I see it. They resonate. They understand. They appreciate. So thank you for having the courage to do your podcast. And for those that you are listening on my show, it is called Open Heart Healing. Now, those of you that are on Vestas, you know because you're here, but we're gonna broadcast this everywhere. So those of you that are listening on Spirit, Purpose, and Energy or Fit to Love or any of the other podcasts, Vesta has successfully launched Open Heart Healing this year, 2024, and her closing audio makes me cry every time because it's her dad in a voicemail. It's beautiful, it's amazing, and you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're
I'm
welcome.
tearing up a little bit over here on my side, so thank you.
It's very good, and you speak directly to the heart of people, and I love it, and I hope everybody will listen to it. So I help people rewire core wound patterns so you were the second group of empowerment strategists. The first group, while they got the exciting beta energy of this is the first time I'm doing this, where I fell short, and not that anyone who's taken that course, because I'm sure Patty is listening to this and Wendy will listen to this and other of the people who are in that beta group will be listening to this, but what they didn't get, because I didn't know what I didn't know. And that's part of what you're doing here. You're putting yourself out there to start a conversation, to help people to see what they resonate with, to see how you're being called to show up in the world and to see how it's received. And for me, having Shauna, I'm sure Shauna's listening to this too. Shauna said to me at the first manifestation boot camp in 2019, you need to teach people what you do. There needs to be more people doing what you do. And I thought, I don't know how to teach that. It's my brain. How do I teach you how to think like me? And then I went to another conference and it came up again. And then I got the hit. I got the idea. The idea wasn't everyone's going to process and think differently. But what I can teach are the tools that I use. I could teach that. So I did. And so my first call to action on the podcast for those who wanted to become an empowerment strategist was more of the assumption or understanding that I'm just going to teach you the tools. So it was a little hands off. Now, some of those ladies in that first group did dive in and do the work, but it wasn't required. And it wasn't required at a certain level because I didn't know what I didn't know. I was just teaching the tools because, our brains work differently. And it's taken me many times, and I'm sure it's not going to stop, to teach something that I think is freaking life-changing and then watch other people not have the same reaction and me go, okay, now why did they not think that was not life-changing? Like, what did I miss? What don't they understand? And then that's when I go, oh, like Wendy just had her summit and Kathy Ziola came on to talk about nonviolent communication. And what was interesting is that by the end of the day, when it was my turn to go, I thought, am I going to teach nonviolent communication? Because that's what Kathy teaches, like 100%. But then I realized, no, I'm going to teach it because the way I teach it isn't the way they teach it. They
Right.
teach it from a different point of view. I teach it from taking responsibility for yourself first before you're asked to listen to somebody else and identify their feelings and needs. Because I thought when I learned it, well, if I can't identify my own, how am I going to be any good at identifying other people's? And then if I get triggered am I really going to be able to put myself in a state where I'm actually listening to what's going on with them? Because I'm triggered. I'm in my own stuff. So I taught it differently. So over the years, it's taken me, and again, year by year, group by group, I go, oh, they weren't completely changed by that exercise like I was, or their whole life didn't shift because of that exercise like it did for me. And in that first group, I taught it very hands off. I taught it as if they were all already coaches. They were already doing this in the world. They understood how to apply it to others. And I was just sort of going through it with the option of doing it. And when it was over and I had the second group, which was you and everyone in your group, hello, ladies who are listening. You guys had a different energy about it coming in and wanted to go through it first. I think without me even requiring it, everybody wanted to do the work first before. I mean, I remember even Scout, like I said to her when she had the conversation with me, I said, "You're a hairdresser. Do you want to be a coach?" She's like, "No, I want to do the work." I was like, "Oh, okay. So let's do the work." So I insisted that everyone do the work. All right. Then that once that group was done, I was like, okay, well, I don't really think I need to do a certification again right now. But there was something really magical about the groups and about the Marcos and about using the work and solidifying that and connecting everybody through that. So then came the 6 month deep dive. And that was what taught me. That was successful for the people that were in that group. They connected in the same way and they had realizations and things. But it taught me that, again, this core wound thing, that there are a lot of really smart people that understand concepts, but they're not going to make changes in their lives, even if they know what their habit or pattern is. So it's when I started to realize, oh, so this whole personal training piece of me is now coming back where I can see, and I think it's going to work. Let me test this out on making it a 3 month program just about core wounds and how we can rewire the core wound patterns. So enter Deirdre and Jane and everybody else in that group. And I was like, let me test it out. Let me see if we can do this. And I was like, okay, this is where we are. And that's really what we're doing because your brain patterns, your beliefs are learned. They were chosen by your brain by default because they were a program that got installed without your permission, really. I mean, your permission because you incarnated in this lifetime and you said, I'm going to learn these lessons and here's what's going to happen. But consciously, you didn't get to choose this belief. You didn't say, yes, I think that sounds accurate. I was abandoned. I was ignored. Like you wouldn't have chosen that. It's a default program. And they create our subconscious. They create these negative patterns and beliefs of what we didn't get when we were growing up, when we were young from our caregivers, and it becomes the foundation of our subconscious mind. And everything from there, everything that you do, everything you choose, all the reasons why you do everything you do is literally a response to your core wound. It's in getting that need met. And I believe because it was a learned pattern and along the way, what got created was the core wound map, which shows you how you participate in that pattern every day. And when we can outline the different levels of that from let's say, the anatomy of your trigger, what does that look like? What belief gets triggered? What do you feel? And then what do you do? Okay, that's step one. Step two, how do you keep that core wound alive? By devaluing yourself, abandoning yourself, ignoring yourself, what have you, whatever your wound is. And then the third step is to be proactive about rewiring that. So for someone that's devalued, who maybe doesn't charge, undercharges, doesn't listen to the voice in their head that keeps telling them to do something, I'll give a shout out to, and this isn't a judgment, I'll give a shout out to Helen right now with the voice in her head about teaching Airbnb stuff, right? That was a voice that kept creeping up and she kept saying, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
I'm over here. But when you can finally listen to yourself and acknowledge that and value that, you start to retrain the brain into a new pattern. Yes, your core wound will always be there, but it does not need to have any power over you. And you can decrease its power over you through creating a new neural pathway of a stronger new belief in opposition to that one.
Sometimes in my life, which this just happened recently, JJ was at the end of this a little bit, in the middle and the beginning actually, but I don't even realize my core wound. I always know it's my core wound. Sometimes I don't realize what core wound is in effect, but sometimes since I learned what I do when my core wounds are being tested, one of the things I do really hard is close myself off. And I have been doing that in the last, I don't know, 6 months. I had a lot of things happen. As you guys know, my dad died and all the things. And I'm still trying to navigate life. And sometimes when I am trying to navigate and I don't know what's next and I don't know what's next, then I try to go into like where I'm trying to control everything. And I didn't even realize I was like shutting myself off until, I mean, pretty recently, actually. I was just shut down. JJ would say, try this. And I was like, nope. And then it was like a week after we had a one-on-one call and I realized what I was doing because well, as a coach, as JJ is my coach, she never wants to steer anybody in a way that's negative, period. It's like she sees what's best for us. It might not be what we thought was best for us, but I can promise that she's never going to steer us in a way that's going to hurt us or make us feel bad intentionally or unintentionally. She's just not going to. And every suggestion JJ was making, I was like, nope, nope, nope. And then I shut myself off a lot in general. So I was shutting myself off. And when I realized I was shutting myself off, I realized I also have to start opening myself up again because when I was the happiest in my life, which JJ saw that too, and she helped me get there and she still helps me get there. And I know I'm so open when I'm so happy, and I just I'm struggling being completely open, and that's okay. It is okay, but it takes me a long time to say that's okay for me. So I just want to say when JJ says you do the work and she says it so casually, it is not that easy to just do the work. You have to commit, you have to be open, you have to be ready because it you go deep in your soul if you're ready. And I mean, if you sign up, you're ready. It is that simple. If you found JJ, there is a reason you found JJ. And if you found JJ, it might be because you need support from just her. You might just need the tribe because there is nothing like the JJ tribe. Some of my best friends in the whole wide world I got from JJ, and one of my best friends in the whole wide world is JJ. So you find that unconditional love through JJ, and if she's sitting here telling you, well, that was good, but I can make it better. Every time she's going to do something, if it's the same as the time before, it's better and it's going to be better. She has a live event this year. I can't wait for. It's going to be so much fun. And I always call it the wrong thing because I call it the one that was last time. I've only been to one live event with JJ and it was life changing. And I think that if you're here and you're listening and you feel like you need a change, JJ is definitely the first place to look. But you really have to be ready to do the work. I remember just doing the core wound work, writing it down. I hadn't even had a one-on-one with you. And it like took so much out of my soul that I slept for a weekend. Like I was just exhausted. And it's just doing that emotional work. But like literally 6 months after that, I was in Redondo living my best life, being happier than I've ever been in my whole life because of JJ. So, well, because JJ showed me what I can do. She doesn't do it for her, she does it for you. So, just wanted to put that out there.
It isn't easy work, but as you said, and again, this is prior to you losing your father, you said, even on my worst day, I'm happier than I've ever been in my entire life.
Yeah, I stand. I mean, even I don't know what I would be like right now after losing my dad if I wouldn't have done this work. Because there are days, and I mean, obviously I'm getting better and better, but I don't know if getting better is the right terminology to use, but there are days when I just can be so appreciative and so happy of the relationship I had with my dad. And I don't know that I would have been able to do that. I would have definitely been in a lot more victim mode than I have been. I would have been like, why did you take him? I would have, I've never asked that myself that. I mean, I'm sad, of course, a lot. And some days are worse than others, but I definitely think if I wouldn't have done that work, there would be a whole lot worse. My mentality on the loss of my dad would be a whole lot worse than it is. And it's pretty bad. So
I think your show, Open Heart Healing, I mean, you're doing
yes.
it. Like you're literally continuing to talk about it, to confront it, to be with it, to allow it. And you might have not, well, you definitely would have done this podcast, that's for sure. Because, right? I don't think so. I think that and I think that while you've gone through all the negative emotions of sadness and depression and anger, I think you'd probably be stuck in anger more,
Oh,
possibly.
for
Um,
sure, for sure.
right. And the grieving process for you, and there is no good grieving process
Right,
necessarily, but because grief is grief, but your awareness of it is helping you to be with it, helping you to allow it, helping you to survive it and not have this like totally trigger you down a really dark, dark hole that you can't get out of. Like, you know what this is, and the identification of it and the understanding of it. And then just showing up here to do your show and to talk about it and to share that is so powerful for people who have had similar experiences, or even if they haven't had similar experiences. It's just powerful for you to connect because you're raw right now. And it only gets better from here. And what I love about what you're doing and where you're going is that you're sharing it all. And so what happens is people in real time get to be healing with you. And you're going to be able to be an example for people to not get stuck in that forever, and to know that there's light in the tunnel and there are tools along the way, and that there's always like that there's hope, basically, right?
right,
Because some people never recover from a loss ever, and their whole life then gets based around that, and there's no perspective or way to interpret it in a different way or way to see it so it doesn't sting as hard, or way to appreciate it or be with it that is more palpable and has meaning and purpose, versus just something bad and
right.
tragic and wrong. It can turn into something beautiful and, and iconic. And like, you found me through Allison Melody's podcast, and Allison lost her parents, and you hadn't necessarily connected with that piece of it. It was more of the vegan stuff, but that's how she gets a lot of her followers, because they can not a lot of them, but whether you be vegan
Right,
or you're lost your parents, but people respond to that because she's very transparent about her struggles, her pain, her journey along the way, all the things.
right,
And I think that is why that's what makes a good podcast for people. They want to feel, because you're in their ear. Right, you're in their ear when they're
right,
listening and they're driving, and it's a very intimate place, and you've entered into this being intimate and not being, and I hate the word perfect because it doesn't exist, but there's no, like, you're not canned, you're not a show, you're not putting
right,
on airs, you're
right.
authentic, you're you, and that's what people crave.
I try. I also try to be perfect, but that I've failed at that so many times that I have felt like a failure for just for trying the impossible. So now I don't do that anymore.
What the hell is
Sometimes
perfect
I
anyway?
don't know. I don't know. It's this weird thing that I have had in my head for years, and so I'm slowly building neural pathways that change that. Actually, I'm not slowly. It's not slowly, and so now I'm at the point where I can say that, and it's not just a story I'm telling myself. Like, I have to be perfect, or I'm perfect, or I'm not perfect. However I was telling myself, I don't even know. But I think it's important to I think the basis of what you do, those core wounds, and then being able to. So when you work with JJ, when it's usually a group, I don't know if it's ever not a group, actually. Is it ever not a group? I mean, so for the things I do, it's a group, but then I get one-on-one calls. So it's more group. And so if I have an aha moment, for 2 years now, I have been able to, almost 3 years, I've been able to get on Marco with a group of people, like-minded individuals who are going through completely different things, but kind of the same at the same time. And I can just get on the Marco and I can say, if I had an aha moment, I can say if I'm having a bad day. I don't do it a lot, but I can. And I know there's no judgment. And I know that I have a group of individuals who completely have my back 100%. And there's the no judgment thing about those groups is, it's really hard to find. And I think, do you have a group that you go reach out to other than us?
I don't. I'm thinking. I have had certain other friends over the years that have kind of come and go, our common threads have been, a course that we took together or an event that we were at together. I think where I am with all of that, because I have asked myself, and I don't, I trust my intuition 100%. And I have a coach, and I don't see her all the time, but she's there when I need her. And honestly, she doesn't handle all the things. Like, I think I was telling somebody on a recent podcast interview of me this week, something about what I love that I do for people. And then again, but not everyone loves this. So just keep in mind that I know when I'm saying this, not everybody loves this. Is that I feel like I can, and it's part of my Mercury in Aquarius, Like I'm a future visionary. Like I see the trend, I see what's coming, I see where you can go, I see what's possible. I'm a long-term thinker. I was 21 years old, really jazzed about biomechanics because I didn't want people to wreck their joints when they were older. Like who cares when they're 21
Right.
about the joint integrity that you have? Because most 21-year-olds are not going to feel any discomfort from their negative emotion, negative actions of their body for years to come. But I knew that whatever you do now is going to affect you 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now. So change what you're doing now because you don't need to be doing that stupid thing that you're doing over there in the gym. You can make it better and still get the same results and preserve your joints at the same time. Why don't you want to do that? So, but I do the same thing. That's kind of like how I'm built. It's the same thing with I see what's possible for people. I can say, here's where I think it can go for you. Here's where I think your strengths are and all this wonderful things. If you want to do it, you can claim it. It can be yours. Like I have vision that goes beyond this year and next year for you
Right.
and bigger than you can see for yourself. And what I did recently, maybe it was like a year ago with my coach, is I kind of came to her hoping she'd be me. I was like, okay, so what do you see for me? Like, I need someone at a higher level than me to like bring me up to a vision that I can't see yet. And she didn't do it. But I didn't, to be fair, I didn't say that's what I needed. I didn't come and say, I'd like you to do this for me. I did ask the question. So, well, what do you think? Well, what do you think? Like, can you give me a vision that I can't see? And but that's not what she does because her coaching style is very much like you help them pull it out of themselves. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to get it from you. So I watched the replay and, I'm sure I had some ahas for myself, and that doesn't mean, and I said this even today on a rewire call. I said, I have all this vision about where you could go, but I don't want to tell you in case it's going to because I know for you that's can be overwhelming and you like, no, one step at a time, don't overwhelm me. So I said to this person, I see where this could go, but I'm not, do you want me? I'm not going to tell you because I don't want to overwhelm you. She said, it won't. I said, okay. So then I told her, I said, here's my vision. And because to me, it's exciting. It's to see what's possible. It's, in fact, somebody interviewed me today and asked what was next for me. And I never got to answer that question, although he wants me to come back because like, what's next for me? I've manifested these things and what's
Mhm.
next. And I have an answer. The answer isn't going to happen next year or tomorrow, but I don't know when it's going to happen. I hope that it does happen, but it's an exciting thing to reach for and to allow in and to manifest currently. So anyway, but
Yeah.
that's what I really enjoy. I like to be able to help people see more for themselves.
Yes. And yeah. And that from this person who JJ does let me see more, but she is right when she says I get overwhelmed. So I can only see a little bit ahead. I'm working. That's the manifestation stuff, the law of attraction that is brand new to me. That is something I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know who Abraham was. I was like, who is this guy? And then you learn all the things and you YouTube him and he's not a him at all. So, but the law of attraction, that's I'm trying to do it right now because like I know parts of me wants to do certain things, but then I have every time I have self-doubt, I feel like the law of attraction is telling me if I'm having self-doubt. I think in this world, when people have self-doubt, a lot of times they think, oh, I'm not supposed to do that. That's my intuition. Or it's a lot of time instead of like now I've switched that where I'm like, I'm having self-doubt. That means I need to push harder there but that's a huge step for me because I still do the self-doubt thing and I'm not that's like a huge work in progress because I have like I want to control things in my life. I want to plan the next steps, but I don't need to plan the next steps because they're already planned for me, but it's hard to trust that. It's very hard to trust that. And I've had a lot of years where that's not what's ingrained in my brain. So I'm trying to learn all the time to just like sit back and trust. And then if my, yeah, I don't know how you can even tell the difference between intuition and like a pushback, like an upper limit.
One's in alignment and one's not.
And so I would have said, I mean, I think I know now most of the time when I'm in alignment. And I think it's hard. That's a hard thing to like, because I'll be like, I've actually, and I see people and I hear people be like, oh, I'm in alignment right now, so good. And then you're like, are you? And because then you hear them say something. How do you navigate when somebody like if I said to you 1 month ago, I'm in alignment, I know I am. which I know I wasn't. I wouldn't have said that because I knew I wasn't. But if I would have said that, how do you navigate those people who are saying like, I'm in alignment, I'm doing this so perfectly. And you can sit there and be like, you're not in alignment, but you're not going to say that because, well, that's not what you do. Like, how do you navigate that?
Well, if it's someone who is working with me, I might say, well, I don't know about that. I mean, again, because they're here to grow, they're here for a reason. And we keep harping on this current rewire. I'm like, okay, guys, like they did great today. There was a lot of emotion. There was a lot of breakthroughs finally. And I'm like, okay, good work, everybody, because, like you're here. And like what I said yesterday on the Marco Polo and the Mastermind, if you guys aren't coming and dumping your stuff, you're not maximizing your time here to grow. And don't keep quiet. Don't hold back. Don't be shy. Don't judge yourself because you have an opportunity. So I want to go back real quick before I answer that question, because you
Mhm.
asked me if I had a group. And part of the reason why I started the mastermind in the first place was because I was in masterminds before. I was paying in other people's masterminds before, but what I wanted didn't exist.
Mhm.
And it didn't exist with someone I resonated with. Right. So when we look at what my tools were, okay, so there was Abraham, so law of attraction,
Right.
the fitness and health and wellness piece.
Mhm.
Then there was the sort of spiritual, like let's use astrology or whatever. Like it was out of balance most of the time in the masterminds that I was in. It was all about money. And it lacked. And I saw people trading money for health, trading money for relationships, trading money for, and I saw also coming out of, one of my favorite podcasts. Most of my solo shows are totally inspired by my clients and by what's going on around me. And that's usually my best work. And that Energy Underneath podcast came out of the 6-month deep dive group. And I'm like, it's not about what you do. It's about what's fueling it. It's about the
Right.
energy underneath the thing you're doing. So you can exercise and that could be good, but you could also, be out of alignment and be exercising too much because you want someone to love you because you think you're not worthy of being loved without looking a certain way. That's not good. So it's not about, oh, exercise is good or bad. It's what's the energy underneath that's fueling it. So I did not find a group of people or a leader that I trusted. And honestly, it was time for me to be a leader. I didn't
Right.
even know that. I've been a leader who didn't know she was a leader my whole freaking life and wondering why I like didn't make sense of a lot of things that went wrong in relationships. I'm like, oh, because I always take over and not meaning to and not by force, but just naturally gravitates towards, okay, like I remember my first podcast group, my first podcast mastermind, which wasn't mine. It was part of Paradise, Podcast Paradise, and John Lee Dumas, and a group of us met, and they had already had like 1 or 2 meetings before I joined, and and Sean, he's awesome. Sean was he's Miss Virgo, Mr. Military, like super, structured, on point, awesome. And I was the only person in that group who was making a full-time income, being an entrepreneur,
Oh.
and had a podcast that was out. Everybody was dabbling in launching their podcast or had just launched their podcast. So just by default, it ended up being that I'm the only one making money. I'm the only one who's doing this full time. So and I also have, at that point, I had courses, I had books, I had, like I kind of was a little more advanced business wise than
Mhm.
everybody else was in that group. So yeah, of course, then I took over because it was obvious that when it came to advice, I had more to share with them than they necessarily had to share with me. That just happened naturally. So for me, this not finding a group that satisfied my belief that it all has to be equal, that you don't trade your health for wealth. You don't trade wealth for your health, like in any way, or your relationships or your self-confidence. Like, and there are plenty of people out there that I know very well who make a lot of money who are wrecked. They're a wreck. They're a mess. They're emotionally a mess. Their body's a mess. Their relationships are a mess. They're not happy, but they hide behind how much money they make. So I didn't want to come from that energy. So that was why in 2019 at the manifestation boot camp, the first one, I said, okay, scared shitless, shit in my pants. No, I mean, literally, like, didn't know what I was going to do. I knew one person was going to be joining, but I didn't know anybody else was, and I wasn't going to have a group with one person. So I like put myself out there in this group. Okay, who wants to join? And luckily 4 people stood up and came to the front of the room. And I had other time to enroll more people because I wasn't starting until end of January 2020. But oh my God, I mean, I knew that if they rejected me, and they wouldn't have been rejecting me, if it wasn't the right offer, I had to walk through that in my mind. I had to say, okay, I want to do this. I'm feeling very called to do this. I'm good at this. and I have value to give, and I want to do it the way I want to do it. And if people in this room aren't interested, I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I'm just going to take it as it's not the right time or it's not the right group of people. So I had to give myself permission to fail, and then it worked. So, and here we still are, 5 years later, still in the fifth year of this mastermind, and and I'd have to try to recreate, or not recreate. I'd have to figure out what else that I need that I can't get here. It's not that I have any resistance to paying or being a part of someone else's tribe in any way, shape, or form. It needs to align with all the things that are important to me. I don't want to be out of balance. I don't want to trade my integrity. I mean, look what I did last year after the rewire. I'm like, okay, nobody can be in the mastermind unless you've done an emotional course with
Right.
me. Okay, can you shoot me in the foot? Like, but I like, this is what feels good for me. It's not going to help me financially, and it hasn't helped me financially, but it feels more integrity. And that's the
Right.
difference. I have to go, I'm not going to sell my soul for money in any way, shape, or form.
Right. So basically, your tribe, you weren't finding the tribe you wanted, so you made your own.
Yep.
And it's, I mean, it's an all-encompassing tribe. It really is. I definitely see that, and I feel that being part of it. I think that's great.
Thank you. I hear positive feedback. I hear people, I hear lots of, the tribe is worth it. If nothing else, the tribe is worth it. So, because again, it is that safe space. So the name of the event this year is called the Embodied Healing Intensive. It's in October. I believe it's 4th through 6th. Whatever. It's the first weekend in October. Go to the website. It's jjflizanes.com/EHI. And yeah, it's going to be a lot different than Awaken Your Dream Life. And it's going to be a lot different than any other event I've ever done, because we are going to be in process and work with the body and the body's energy centers and blocks, and see what your body wants to tell you and what it wants to let go of and what it wants to release and what you need to know. And there'll be some forgiveness work. I won't lie. We're going to be doing some of that on Friday, and then we're going to kind of go into the body, and we're going to do some of my favorite exercises. One that you've done before, but I'm going to spend a little bit more time on it come October, because I think it's just a way to crack people right the F open. Um, and I love it. And it doesn't require any other things you have to do or take. So we're going to do that. And to answer your question about what happens when someone is out of alignment, but they think they're in alignment, well, you leave them there. So it's why you can't, unless they're asking for help, whatever they believe is whatever they believe. And if they're not ready to hear it or see it, then that's not on you, that's on them. And even if you try to tell them or explain, the likelihood is they're not going to hear you anyway, because
Right.
you're literally speaking a different frequency than they're on.
Right.
And so you just have to let them be. The only thing you can ask, and I'm about to do a podcast on how to help people who don't want to be helped. The only thing you can do, well, you can do many things, but the one thing you can do if you're in communication with a person is to ask them, are you getting everything you want?
Hmm.
Are you manifesting on purpose? Are you receiving things that you are intending?
Right.
Because if they're not, then there's the indicator that they are not in alignment.
Do you think if you're sometimes like when I write my manifestation journal, especially when I first started it, I would write something, and then as soon as I write it, I have a negative thought of why I can't have it. Am I creating neural pathways by writing it, even if I still accidentally think it?
Do you write the negative thing?
No, I only write the positive. Like I only write the positive. Like I mean, I'll do something super basic, but sometimes I'll write I want a garden, and then I'll put right away. I'm like, well, I can't have a garden because I travel. Like I instantly have the negative.
Okay, I invite you to acknowledge that thought and then go to step 3. How do I solve the problem? How do I have a garden even though I travel?
Okay.
Because your intention is good to feel better, and then your subconscious, which doesn't believe you can have what you want, and your upper limiting that doesn't believe you deserve to have what you
Right.
want, comes in and kind of kicks the tire, kicks the table, kicks the legs out from underneath you, right? We don't want to end there. So then meet that voice with, well, how can I?
Right. Okay. Yeah, because I think maybe that if you haven't listened to many of JJ's podcasts, one of them is called How Can I? And it's one of my favorite ones. I talk about it regularly because I think it is really, really important in this life to be like, if somebody tells you, like, when you're a kid, if somebody tells you you can't do something, you're going to do it. And I mean, not that you're not allowed, but that you can't do it. Like kids aren't like, well, oh, let me think about that. They're just going to do it. They're going to be like, you tell me I can't, I'm doing it. And we lose that somewhere as adults, and we don't try, and we lose our brave, I don't want to say our bravery, but we lose our, well, one, we care too much about what other people think. I think that's a big hindrance in who we're going to hurt. And if you're making yourself happy, I truly, truly believe you can't hurt the people you care about if you're making yourself happy, if they truly care about you.
Well, let me add that they have probably been conditioned to ask for behavioral changes as a sign of loving somebody. And so when someone decides to be hurt by your behavior or choices, they've tied themselves up in some kind of story that is so victim entangled that they're never going to be happy anyway. So it doesn't
Right.
matter if you change or you don't do what you do, there will always be a condition, there will always be an attachment, there will always be some kind of consequence of you. And so, because it's about them and understanding that. And I think that if you do what you want to do and you allow yourself, because I think if we're all in alignment and we're all doing this feelings and needs exercise, we're all doing like the basic of like attending to ourselves and being responsible for ourselves, and someone else becomes hurt, the best thing you can do is just continue to be an example, because they're either going to learn a lesson or they're going to fall off, or they're not going to connect with you as much. And that will be fine for you, even if they're family, because you'll start to meet where it's okay to meet for both of you. But giving up your life for somebody else who wouldn't do the same for you, or who wouldn't heal themselves to understand that you're not trying to hurt them, like that's just a mess you don't want to get involved in. We come back to ourselves at some point, hopefully. And I think the whole kid thing, when you're little, you just want to get love, and you
Right.
get it, you want it in the way that you want it. So we're all told to perform for love in some way. Oh, you're a good girl. Who's a good girl? Who's a bad girl? You're a bad girl. You're going to get punished. I mean, these are the messages that we get. And so we get taught early on how to deny our own inner guidance.
Oh yeah, I definitely did that to Blaze. I definitely did that to Blaze. He's okay. He's okay.
He's great. He feels you.
He
He
does.
he feels you, he understands you, and that's important, because somebody who's languaging, okay, so let's say, because he's a Virgo just like you and he has multiple
Yeah,
Virgos just
he
like you, so he
does.
feels
Yes.
you. So even though your words could have impacted someone else with a different set of ways to interpret,
Right.
much harsher,
Right.
because he feels you, he doesn't care what your words were. He
Oh,
could have
it's true.
he
I
felt
I
you.
remember one time he was like 12-ish, maybe 10. I was a single mom, so he was going to spend the night at a friend's house, and I was like, I was talking to my sister on the phone, and I was like, I cannot wait to have a night by myself. And he was like, yeah, right, mom. And I was dead ass serious, but he was like, yeah, right, mom. But I felt like that I was that moment in my life, I felt like such a successful mom because I meant that. I didn't mean for him to hear like that, but when he said that, I was like, oh, he does know I love him so much. Like, so that, and he was old enough to be like, yeah, right, mom. And I was like, oh, that's right. He does know how much I love him, even though I was ready for a date, but it was so stinking cute. And yeah, with him and I have talked about it for a long time because I've been a work in progress my whole life, but I like took the turn of really finding, I don't want to say like getting emotional freedom as what I want to say I'm finding. I didn't really start finding that until I found you. But I have been working on myself. So he has seen it and he has seen the growth. And he does talk about it in that episode and that, I also think that's a testament to just our relationship in general. So he does know that he can't really do anything that's gonna make me not love him.
He does. And those words on someone else who didn't feel you might have been devastating,
Right.
right?
Oh yeah.
Right.
I think they have been. I think I have treated people poorly by
This
not
isn't about
intent.
you. This is just saying in parent in general. This isn't about you, Vesta. I'm just saying a parent.
I know, but I do the way Blaze and I talk to each other, some parents and children would not feel like that's okay. And at that, I think that there's some times when I talk to you, some people wouldn't be okay with that.
Okay. Well, they're not some people. So
I know. Oh, I know. And that's why I feel like I did manifest you.
yeah, I'm able to take the punches.
That's what I'm saying.
I've been a punching bag before. Didn't like it. I don't want to do it again. I have to get triggered when some other family members seem to think that that's still my role. But yeah, but put that all together, and understanding the concepts that I want people to understand allows for emotional freedom,
Right.
allows for compassion for everyone, and especially for yourself. And that's really the goal. Like I said that yesterday in a Marco, and I reiterate today on on the rewire. The number one goal is always the most simple thing I want for everybody and myself is for you to feel the best you can for as long as you can and get everything you want. Period. End of story. Find a way to feel amazing. Hold it as long as you possibly can when you get triggered, because it's going to keep happening, because it's life and contrast expands us and makes us better. There's always a gift in it. But, it's really just finding a way to sustain a higher level frequency, period. End of story. And all the things I teach, core wounds, big leap, love languages, whatever, these are ways to outline why we don't, why we can't,
Right.
why it's hard.
Right. The
That's
upper
it. They're
limit,
just,
yeah, that upper limit, that's also another thing that was so huge for me. Like when I learned that, I'm like, oh, that's just me upper limiting. It's so simple. But it's yeah, I don't know, like because I'm my methodical brain, I'm like that, but it's such a simple concept. It's like just to grasp. It's really fucking hard to change. That's the hardest. Like once you find your core wounds, like it's like, oh, okay, they're my core wounds. I mean, that makes sense. But it's how you rewire them and how you change them and how you upper limit and how you consistently like it. And sometimes when I'm going and I'll be like, shit, why am I like, why am I doing it now? Like I'll go up to take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And I think if I take 4 steps back, part of that is because I need to learn to be okay with taking 4 steps back. For me, that's my learning because sometimes that's going to happen and that's okay. That self-compassion piece is very hard for me.
well, you're doing great.
I'm doing
You're
okay.
doing you're doing great. Imagine what it would have been, had we not had this journey together and you'd be in this specific space. I mean, you wouldn't even be thinking about being compassionate to you potentially.
Oh
So, I
yeah.
mean, who knows what would have happened? But at the same time, when you're talking about the action and the lessons, I had someone in the rewire say recently, she said, and she is a veteran of therapy. Like she still has a psychiatrist. And but she'll say, what this has been really good for is the action piece. And that's why I came up with the rewire, because the personal trainer in me now is using the same idea of
Mm-hmm.
stretching you instead of standing over you and asking you to commit to yourself and push one more rep out because you can do it. And even though it's uncomfortable and you're going to fail, which is the goal, by the way, in exercise, is to, yeah, because then you're going to build more muscle. You're going to get the results that you want because it's not comfortable. It's not easy. And that's why you've hired me, to help push you to that level that you
Right.
won't go by yourself. Well,
Right.
that's now what I'm doing with the emotional work, and it is very action based. It is that's the whole point of a rewire, is to do things that you wouldn't normally do, that challenge you, that scare you, that, but not randomly, like they're very specific to you and your wounds and your patterns and your habits. And so it's me going back to the training roots of pushing. And
Right.
again, but you have to trust me. You have to be on board for that. And even you guys in the second round of Empowerment Strategist still you got pushed a little, but you didn't get pushed like Jane and Deirdre did and their group. And not that they all push themselves, right?
Right.
Like everybody has their own level of how much they're going to allow themselves to push. I mean, Patrick and he allowed me to keep pushing him and pushing him. And of course, then he manifested doing the whole boxing thing, which pushed him. But there was no mistake that happened during the time he was in the program, because he was so scared that he was going to quit. It was definitely going to quit. He got sick. He literally physically got
Oh
sick.
my God.
And right. But it was like, well, so it was like, okay, I'm being presented with this at this time when I have the support to take myself to the next level. And so, that's what it has. So shout out to Patrick
Yeah.
and everyone else who's listening to this that I've already mentioned.
So what's next for you? We have the EHI in October. Do you have any more courses starting this year?
Well, I'd like to do the date your body. I think it's time to dive into body shame. And I'm going to try to do a beta of that and see who's interested. What's next for me in terms of like big manifestations?
Yeah.
I want a retreat center.
Nice. In Ohio?
Yes. People come to Ohio as a destination place for, getting off the grid and like spiritual things. We got the Krishnamurti Center here. We've got not Buddha, I forget the name of the spiritual guy that one of my acupuncturists used to follow, and she sent me to his tree. Like she's like, go to his tree. I'm like, okay, I'm going to this guy's tree. Anyway, we have all that kind of very vortexy things happening here. We're the Sedona of California
Oh,
without the
very good.
rocks.
Okay.
And so it's a very spiritual place. And I'd like to buy property or land in Santa Paula, which is the next town over, which it's a little less expensive than Ojai. Although if I got gifted or somehow came into an amazing deal in Ojai, I would definitely take it for the Ojai residence and the Ojai-ness of it. But I'm happy to go to Santa Paula and call it Ojai, and have some acreage
Mhm.
and build a retreat center. It's funny because my ex-husband, that was his when he was an architect, and his thesis was and he designed a center. And so somewhere along the line, I would say, so talk about like interpreting and vibration, right? I'd say, oh, well, you're going to build it and I'm going to fill it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he was so mad. You just come in and steal the show. You just stole the thunder right out from underneath me. And I was like, what are you talking about? First of all, he's never going to build it. But let's say if he was still with me, he would build
Mhm.
it but it became because I attached myself to it. Instead of him thinking, what a great thing we could do together. Wouldn't that be amazing? Oh my God, that probably will actually make it happen. It became this competition and power struggle of that I somehow took the thunder, took all the air out of the room because I came onto the project. I'm like, okay, so you're going to build a retreat center and then what? What are you going to do with it? Like I do the things that go inside the retreat center, but now
So
I'm just going to
will
do the whole thing by myself or with Doug.
yes. Oh, perfect. Will you be doing retreats all year long, or will you be loaning it out for retreats?
I have no idea because it just
That's
depends on
interesting.
when this comes into my life, when the universe starts to lead me in the direction of its time, or so I don't know. I don't know how. I think I have no idea. I just know I would like to maybe somewhat regularly, maybe on a certain schedule. Maybe we take off the summer because it's pretty hot here. So maybe it's like a couple, weeks in the fall, somewhere between October and December, or maybe October, November, and then maybe February, March, April, May, and then take off January, December, and the summer. I don't know. I mean that would be a great schedule, and of course I'd love to bring other people in to help and to do other things, and um, yeah, and to teach it and just to be with people who can take themselves out because you've been to a live event of mine. Now imagine that for a week in a place where you're also incorporating mindfulness and nature and slowing down in general. Uh,
Right.
what the impact of that would be like. And again, not necessarily the same size of the room. It'd be a smaller size, but it would be like one of our groups right now, whether it be the
Mhm.
mastermind or but in a different, again, I compact as much as I can so to be helpful for people in travel and expenses, but take those two things away and extend it over a longer period of time. Your nervous system will calm down quickly. You
Mhm.
can be open to repatterning faster. You'll have different experiences that you wouldn't have in your life. So I think there's so many benefits to doing it that way. And it would be for those who are ready to invest and to invest their energy and their time in that way too.
Yeah, the live events, and I say I've only been to one live event, but I've been to other things with JJ. One of the things that you force on me when I was, especially the one in Redondo, you force on, it's basically you have to be there. You're doing so much, you're thinking so much, you're putting yourself there so much, you don't have there, you're not checking out. There's no, and that is powerful because that's what we want to do. That's why people meditate. That's why, maybe not all everyone, but a lot of times because they want to be present in their life. And that's one thing that's being forced. I mean, nothing's forced, but by choice, I guess. But it's super, super important. You're there and you have to be there. It's like you have to be in the moment. You have to be paying attention. And you will be like, it's not, and you're going to want to be. So I think that if that was spread over a whole week rather than just 2.5 days or whatever we're going to be there for, I'm in. I love it. I felt so good coming back from Redondo that first time. I've never felt better. And like the week before, I was visiting my nephew who had cancer, and I still felt amazing. Sad or whatever, but not victimy because my nephew had cancer. But like I found something out terrible, and then I went and spent some time with you, and I felt amazing. And I continued to do that and I still don't feel terrible. I just have like a little bit of sadness at all times. But that's. to be expected. I'm not beating myself up for that at all. And I actually do appreciate that going through the grief that I am going through. I do allow myself, like, if I'm having a bad day, I'm having a bad day, and it's fine. I instead of trying to like stop crying, I mean, of course, like if I'm at work or something, I try not to cry too much, but like they have all seen me cry at my job now. So because it is what it is. So where can people find you?
Well, if there's anyone currently listening to this podcast that doesn't already know me,
Right.
it's jjflizanes.com. And I only say that because I know so many people who do.
Oh, it's true.
Um,
Yes.
but in the future, I would love to meet new people too. jjflizanes.com and people on my show. I mean, I'm going to air this on my show, and there's a ton of people who, yes, they know me because they listen to the show, but they've never been to anything. They've never
Right.
signed up for anything. They've
Mhm.
never stepped forward. So jjflizanes.com. Flizanes is where to find me. And of course, if you're looking on the podcasts only, just type in JJ Flizanes and you'll see a bunch of podcasts come up,
A whole
and
bunch.
a whole bunch. And you can
Yeah.
just pick one, pick whatever gravitates towards, whatever makes you moves your body and your energy and makes you go, "Ooh, I want to know that," or that is attractive and resonates with me.
And if you're ready to get your dose of JJ right now and you want to be around her or be in the tribe, I am a big fan of Empower You. She does full moon calls, she does new moon calls, and we do a group coaching call every month. I don't know that we do full and new moon every month, but there's a lot of calls. I just wrote down July's because I filled out my schedule, but it is worth what is it, $20 a month?
25.
$25 a
But if
month.
you sign up for the entire year, you get 2 months free. So it's like 200 or 250 for the entire year.
Yeah. If you, the biggest thing for me with the Empower You is if you feel like you are trying to make these beautiful changes in your life, because we all are. If you're listening to this, you're trying to better yourself. You're trying to make these changes and you're trying to be better. And a lot of times you're like, I see all these people every day and they're not even noticing my changes. What is wrong with these people? No, you don't really think it quite like that, but kind of. You're like, I'm changing. How are these people who've known me my whole life not seeing me change? And usually they don't see you change quite as quickly, and sometimes they don't at all. And that's okay. But if you want to be with people who support you and love you where you're at and meet you where you're at, Empower You is empowering. So
Thank Thank you. And
it
if
really
anyone's
is.
interested in that, I mean, if you go to my website on the podcast page, there is a link to join Empower You because there is a podcast that goes along with it. The podcast used to be some solo shows and things that I've done that were specifically just for that private podcast. What it's really turned out to be is really just the replay of some of the group coaching calls that we've had, because what I found was that people really wanted more of the group things, the full moon, the new moon, the Empower You. Like the podcast in itself wasn't really like, they're like, it didn't make or break whether somebody joined or not. So it's definitely the least expensive thing I have. It still has a value to it to go back and listen to any of the podcasts that you'll never hear on my show. But what I want to do right now for those that are listening on my show as well as your show, because you'll be back on my show, you and Helen and Wendy, before September, to talk about your next summit. But
Mhm.
because this is evergreen and people will hear it forever, in case you don't know, Vesta hosted a summit last year in 2023 called The Power of Choosing You, and she's doing it again in 2024. And regardless of when the date is or if it changes, the website's still the same, and you can register in order to find out when it's going to be, because it'll be free. It will be at least one day. It might be 2 days, but it's going to be a whole lot of fun. You'll get to meet Vesta in person. You'll get to see her in action. You'll get to learn a lot because it's going to have a lot of value. So Vesta, tell them where to sign up, just to start to at least put them name on the
Mhm.
list so that when you announce the dates, they can put them in their calendar.
It's you can either sign up at it's just powerofchoosingyou.com or powerofchoosingyousummit.com. You can sign up and get emails from me, sporadic emails. No, usually they're every other week. I'm working on the consistency. When I pick a date, I'm just waiting to solidify it. I will say when that comes out, I will post emails and send emails and make sure everyone knows when it's going to be. It is what last year it was life changing for me, and I still think about some of the things that I learned from the power of choosing you last year. So it was very special to me, and I couldn't have done it without JJ. So this year she's going to be on it again. So there's two reasons to go, me and JJ.
Yeah, you got to come. It's a whole lot of fun, and
Yes.
you will learn a lot. And like I said, it's a way for you, especially if you're someone who's listening to this show. And right now I'm talking to Open Heart Healing Podcast. Let Vesta know. Let Vesta know that what you're interested in. Tell her what topics you'd love to dive a little deeper into, both for the podcast as well as for the summit, because she wants to be of service not only to the people that she knows, but the people that some of you that might listen that she doesn't know. So please send her an email, reach out on Instagram, follow her on Instagram, Vitality with Vesta. Send her a DM and let her know, hey, this is what I'm interested in. I'd love if you'd consider, because she's open to ideas. She wants to make sure this is effective for everybody. And again, it's 100% free, and there will be a short replay. And then of course there'll be an offer to have the videos forever and ever to revisit if you want to purchase it, which will again be like nothing. Like it'll be, don't worry about it. Like you can afford it. So, and it'll be definitely worth it. So make sure to sign up, thepowerofchoosingyou.com. Even if there's not a date there, just put your name on the list. Let us know you're interested so she can start to cultivate and curate all of the different topics and speakers and people that she wants to bring to you and what you want to hear from her and everyone else.
Also, I have a Facebook group, Open Heart Healing Podcast, if you want to pop on there. I know Jennifer messaged me, Jennifer Kane. That was very nice. Thank you, Jennifer.
Shout out to Jennifer.
Yes.
She'll be at Embodied Healing Intensive.
She'll probably be at the Power of Choosing You also. She was
sure.
there last year. So, this is the support system you get from JJ. So not only JJ, you get this great tribe.
Right. Well, they're all extensions of, and I appreciate you saying that it's a non-judgmental zone, because it is. And it isn't, I've had to create something that I couldn't find. And if you listen to me and if you're listening to Vesta, there's a certain, you come in feeling safe pretty quick, because of all the different topics that I talk about that you're of interested in, like law of attraction, health, all the things like astrology, someone else might think in your life, I don't understand that. Like, I'm not interested in that. Right. But you walk in and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, all these people, they care about the same things I do. Ooh, that's cool. And then we can all kind of agree to that. And you're not going to find, especially at a live event, you're not going to find, in my opinion, and please tell me if I am wrong. I am here to be proven wrong. Please show me, because I'd love to know if you can go to an event such as mine and have the same kind of support, because they will be pushing you and loving you and accepting you and holding the space for you to grow in whatever way you need to, because no one's attached to you. No one, like, we have no attachment. We don't have an agenda. We're not trying to hold you down. We're trying to push you up. We're trying to help you get to that next place. And sometimes, or most of the time, I think you need to have a very sacred, neutral, safe space to do that with people who are also within a similar mindset. Because your family won't understand. Your friends might not understand. Your coworkers probably won't understand. So don't try to tell them. Give yourself the respect and the love and the honoring of choosing you. Yes. Power of choosing you.
Yes.
And showing up somewhere, and allow yourself to be supported by other people.
Yes. And I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.